Welcome to Problem Solved, the podcast where me and a special co-host solve all your problems really easily, probably.
Problems? Are you kidding me? I don't have any problems. Okay, I might have a few, but I can work on them with you. Come on.
Hello, and welcome to Problem Solved. I am Jeff Gunther, licensed professional counselor. Today is the day. Today is the day that I talk to one of my heroes, Dan Savage. You know who Dan Savage is. He writes a weekly column for the alt weekly newspaper up in Seattle called The Stranger. He has his own podcast, which is a pretty big deal, called Savage Lovecast. He is one of my heroes, one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing. I started following his work back in the early 90s. That's crazy. He's been doing this forever. He's a real national treasure. I was pretty nervous before I got on the pod with him, but I think I handled myself okay. We talk about some really interesting topical stuff that I think that you all will be really interested in. And I get to ask him a bunch of questions that I've always wanted to ask him. So I'm not going to get in the way of this podcast episode. I'm going to allow you to experience one of my favorite moments in my career, talking to Dan Savage, having like a peer-to-peer conversation with Dan. Okay, no big deal. Here we go. This is a podcast where we explore the intricate world of relationships and navigate the complexity of mental health together. I am Jeff Gunther, a licensed therapist, but in this space, I'm your host, not your personal therapist or the therapist for our guests. This show offers a platform for open conversations about relationship and mental health challenges, providing insights and perspectives for educational and entertainment purposes only. It's crucial to remember that our discussions do not replace professional therapy or constitute a therapist-client relationship between myself, our callers, or you, our listeners. If you're dealing with personal struggles or seeking support, I urge you to consult with a qualified professional who can provide the personalized care you deserve. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, Dan Savage. How you doing?
I'm good, Therapy Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. I've been a longtime reader of your column. So like reading Savage Love is was a lot of like my inspiration for kind of like doing what I do now. But before Savage Love, it hasn't like quite aged well. But I was like really into Loveline. Did you ever listen to Loveline on K-Rock?
I did have to listen to Loveline a little bit because, that blew up in the early 90s when Savage Love was blowing up and going into syndication. And I was often asked about Loveline, and I would dip in and listen and be appalled and dip out.
Yeah, I started listening when I was 11 or 12, and that was right when Adam Carolla got there. He replaced Ricky Rackman. Ricky Rackman was like a VJ from MTV, I think 120 Minutes. But when like Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew really got things rolling is when I tuned in. And maybe not the best way to learn as like an 11-year-old boy, but I was exposed to a lot.
There was a lot of pathologizing, not just kink shaming, but pathologizing of kink that was really just uninformed and stigmatizing of open relationships and sex work. But the thing that really threw me was I bounced in once to listen, and they were talking about HIV as if it was spontaneously generated during gay sex.
Oh,
that there were sex acts that was like rubbing two sticks together, you can make fire. If you rub these two dicks together, you can make HIV. And it was just so, I was so appalled that there might be young gay kids out there at that moment in the early 90s when pre-PrEP, pre-protease inhibitors, when it still was kind of a death sentence, who would be terrified hearing that. And of course, there's no risk of HIV if HIV isn't present. And using condoms was an extremely effective way of preventing HIV, and just it was not informed about what was in the early 90s really the biggest issue in sex and sexuality and sex advice.
Yeah, for sure. Have you followed the careers of Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew?
I was on Adam Carolla's podcast once.
Yeah.
And he was on mine a long time ago. And it was... Yeah, my listeners weren't into me having him on my podcast, and in the end, I wasn't into it either, so I didn't have him back. But of course, Dr. Drew is unavoidable, like a cultural phenomena, and
you can't get away from the guy.
And I think you're a crank. I think he's a crank. and a bit of a
Total fucking
quack.
crank. Yeah. He was like, I mean, even I think he sort of like he jumped the what's it? He jumped the shark. The shark jumped the whatever.
He jumped the
Uh,
shark.
he jumped the shark when he did like the celebrity rehab stuff for me, like on VH1, I think. It
Yeah.
was that, yeah. But you sort of like, I feel like, yeah, you going on the Adam Carolla podcast, or like I've seen you like you used to go on Bill Maher's like show, and I was like, oh, look at that. You're wearing the shirt. And so I feel like you're like this great, like progressive voice going on shows that maybe aren't like in parallel with your opinion. Is that like a role that you like to play?
It is. And,
Yeah.
back during the marriage equality debate, I was always up for going on right-wing Christian radio and talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And walking into the Lion's Den every once in a while to debate people who thought I was going to hell. And I would surprise them by saying, you can think that. That's fine. I don't want to argue with you about your theology. You don't have to come to the wedding. We don't have to have it at your church.
Right.
And do you think the Jews are going to hell and the yoga instructors and the atheists, and you allow them to marry? So can we have the same deal? And, if you're Catholic, you think the Lutherans are going to hell, but you're not attacking the Lutheran church. You're trying to get it banned. And if you're Lutheran, you think the Catholics are going to hell. Like, there's all sorts of people you think are going to hell. And I would have these conversations with religious conservatives. And I really enjoyed them. And yeah. And so, like, I love going on Bill Maher. I've been on Bill Maher, like, I don't know, 20 times. And people think that if I'm on that often, that I approve of everything that comes out of Bill's mouth, when actually, if you watch me on the show, I'm often challenging the things that Bill has to say, which is why Bill likes to have me on,
Right.
because he does like to be challenged. And I think, I'm not of the like currently reigning lefty school. Like I shouldn't have to explain it to you. I shouldn't have to justify. I think we do need to explain and win arguments.
Yeah. For sure. Is there anybody out there that like really inspires you today and that you look up to or enjoy following or listening to?
Well, I follow you. The exchange of compliments has now been, the circle has been completed.
Right.
And I really enjoy your stuff on Instagram, which is where I found out about you and began to follow you. A lot of like Esther Perel. I'm such an Esther Perel stan,
a legend,
which is an obvious answer, but like I've reread her books 2 or 3 times, and I'm constantly quoting her. So I guess even still, Esther Perel would probably be the person who inspires me most. Yeah,
she's amazing. I think she's like inspiring for most like relationship experts and therapists out there. Yeah, we love her.
Yeah, and she says very sometimes radical things, but in this way that people don't realize that she's slipping the IV in and pumping them full of the meds they need.
Yeah. She also has like studying to become a therapist and being a therapist for 20 years now. I've seen like lots of like deep cuts of Esther Perel, and she does really good against like narcissists. She's got this sort of like, she can put a fucking narcissist in place. And I think that like she's got a little bit of like good narcissist energy. I mean, we shouldn't be throwing that word around, yada yada, but whatever. Like she like knows how to go fucking toe to toe with somebody, and I love to see it. Yeah.
Me too.
Is there, last question before we get to like I have a couple others, but we're going to get to voicemail soon. I've always wondered, like, if you could start the Savage Love column all over again in the 90s, was it like 90 or 91 or something that you
91.
started at? 91. Is there anything that you would do differently? Or do you think that you would do what you did?
Well, there are certainly things, if you write a weekly column for 33 years and you haven't changed your position or thinking on anything, you weren't really writing, because writing is thinking out loud, especially writing that kind of conversational column where you're in dialogue with your readers who may not agree with you about everything, and you're reacting often in real time to new information as it comes in. I was really skeptical about PrEP. The first studies I read about PrEP, I was just not convinced that it provided the safety that it did. And I was anti-PrEP. And then I kept reading and more studies came in. I became very pro-PrEP. And, people will still accuse me of being anti-PrEP because somehow they stumbled over a column they didn't read the subsequent columns. But there's lots of things like that where, when asexuality first kind of had its moment and burst into public consciousness, I was like, the fuck is this? And I don't buy it. Like, as a gay person, I could see how people might be motivated to claim asexuality when they were, because as a kind of closet. And I was skeptical. And then, like, more came in and the research done at the University of British Columbia into asexuality, and I read more about it. And I'm very, like, I don't want to say pro it. It exists. It is a sexual orientation that about 1% of people have. But if you read what I wrote first, and this is like part of the problem. Yeah. So would I do things differently? Yes, I would know everything I know now then. But I didn't know everything I know now then, because a lot of the things I know now weren't knowable then.
Right.
And yeah, but would I do it differently? I don't know. Like, would I tell fewer dick jokes? I don't think so. I'd tell just probably as many dick jokes as I've told.
Yeah.
I like dick jokes.
Good for you. I've been to like Hump Fest a handful of times. I was at like the first Portland showing when you all came down to Portland for the first time. Love it, support it. It's very fun and it's pretty hot. And I've always wanted to like
be in it.
But now make a film. But now I feel like, is that smart? Is that like okay for like a public figure, someone who's like internet famous, to do it, or should I stay away?
Well, I think the Kardashians and Paris Hilton decades ago made it possible for public figures to have sex tapes out there in the world, and survive professionally or thrive even professionally. You look at how pot played out in public life, where if you were, it was known that you'd smoked pot, you could be ruined politically and as a public figure. Right. And then, Clinton comes along and, I smoked, but I didn't inhale. Right. And everyone's like, well, that's bullshit. And then George Bush just like refuses to answer the question. And then Barack Obama is like, yeah, I inhaled. That was the point. I was trying to get high. And it was over as a politically controversial thing. And I really do think, because so many people have their first sexual experiences online, we flirt online, we swap pictures and videos, everybody, particularly everybody under 30, 40, has compromat out there, has dirty pics and videos. And we're going to reach this point where, just like now, if a public figure never smoked pot, we're like, that's weird. Did you not have any friends? That's weird if you didn't, as opposed to ruinous if you did. And we're going to get there with, I think, dirty pics and videos, where it's going to be weird if you didn't have any out there. And since we all do, then we just shouldn't make an issue of this, because we don't want ourselves personally destroyed. We don't want our kids destroyed. We don't want this to be the standard by which people are ruined in politics or entertainment or therapy or what we do. And so we're all just going to have to agree, like, mutual assured destruction here. We all did this. We all smoked pot. So like a picture of somebody with a joint in their hand can't be the reason they're not allowed on the Supreme Court, which actually happened to a Reagan nominee 40 years ago. And it's going to be like, okay, his dick pics are out there. And so what? And we'll have, I've been saying for years, we're going to see the president's dick at some point. We've seen Hunter Biden's dick. We've seen Joe Biden's brother's dick. We're getting really close to the president's dick. Because somebody right now is 19 years old and blasting their dick pics out and will be running for president at 40 and having to talk about their dick pics.
So maybe I might as well have like, some control over what videos are out there. And this would be a way of taking that power. Okay.
You can be the change you wish to see in the world by putting your dick pics out there. I wrote an op-ed for the New York Times when I think the National Enquirer was threatening to release Jeff Bezos's sex messages and pics. And I wrote an op-ed saying, hey, Jeff, just release them yourself and help make this not something that can destroy a person. But he lawyered up and scared the shit out of them instead.
Yeah, that makes sense. That seems on brand for him. Okay, I'll think about it.
We in Hump is at my dirty little film festival. People make films where they don't show their faces. They do have to sign releases for us because the law requires us to have those releases, and we require them to make sure that everybody is a willing participant. But also people make animated shorts. People make just voiceovers with like collages or montages. So there's a way to be in Hump without it being your face and your dick.
But the thing that my idea was like, I want to do like a parody on my like Therapy Jeff videos, like top 10 ways to make Therapy Jeff orgasm or something, like something like that. Like just really fucking lean into
Oh
it.
my God, yes, please, 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 please. You're in. You're
Okay,
in.
right.
Like getting into Hump is like, it's a high bar because we get a lot of submissions
Yeah, you
and we
do.
don't have a lot of slots.
Uh-huh.
But if you made a Therapy Jeff parody video that was dirty, I guarantee you would make it into the festival.
Okay. All right. Good. Then I'm going to fucking do it. Okay. We've got some voicemails to answer. So, Andrea, can you go ahead and play the first one for us?
Okay. Why does it seem like folks who are Gen Z think cheating is the absolute worst thing? Have you guys noticed this? I mean, it seems like there is no room for nuance in the conversation about infidelity. And yeah, obviously, don't cheat. It's not great, right? It's not great for our relationships. It's not great for our souls. Let's not cheat. But Dan Savage has said maybe we don't expect 100% perfection around fidelity because we're human beings. And I'm curious what you two think. I know that Dan has said that under certain circumstances, if you do this one-time kind of one-off cheat, and if you can take care of it and never do it again, maybe you don't tell your partner. That's really edgy. Like my body responds in a very uncomfortable way to that because I really like informed consent. But I also have this high appreciation for the absolute messiness of being human. So is there room for both of those things at the table? And Jeff, I've noticed you share Dan's sentiment a lot on social media and you get so much backlash for it. Will you guys just talk about it?
Where to begin?
Yeah. I mean, so is that caller accurately representing like views that you've had or maybe still have currently about cheating?
I think cheating is wrong. I think cheating at times is the least worst option for all involved. Mm-hmm. It's easy to say cheating is never okay and walk away. When you're in my position or your position and you get letters from people who say, I've been married for 20 years, the relationship has been sexless for a decade, I'm losing my mind, we've done therapy, we've worked about it, we've talked about it, nothing has changed. My partner is financially dependent on me and we have 3 special needs children. Mm-hmm. And I'm supposed to tell that person, well, the right thing to do is get a divorce. Mm-hmm. Before you touch anybody else with your genitals ever again in your life, mm-hmm. or to be celibate all your life, which you've just said in your letter, you're cracking and can't do anymore. And I think in a situation like that, where one person doesn't want to have sex, and it's not about like, oh, if you just twiddle all the knobs, if you did more housework, if you like talked and went to a therapist and talked about it, saw a couples counselor, you have to sometimes accept the premise that the reader's question and the facts you have in evidence. And they said, we've done all of this and nothing has changed. What do I do? And I think telling that person to do what you need to do to stay married and stay sane, period, is the right thing to do for the partner too, who doesn't want the relationship to be sexual anymore for whatever reason. And the reason might be that the person who wrote me the letter is a terrible person or has terrible personal hygiene or just is a jerk. And yet they're resigned to stay in the relationship because they have a family, they have kids, they're mutually dependent in a way. And it's not always like the person who cheats has all the power. And like, I'm going to quote Esther Perel, the victim of the affair is not always the victim of the marriage. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people cheat because they kind of have no other option, no other choice. And they need to stay sane and to stay married. And it's in the best interest of the person they're cheating on for them to cheat too. And to not disclose, to not ask for permission. I call it polyamory. Sometimes people are polyamorous, where you kind of know that you might be being cheated on, and you don't want to know that you know, because if you know that you know, then you have to look them in the eye and they know you know. And then you feel like if your friends or family also know, you have to do something that you would rather not do about it. Mm-hmm. And, when the caller talks about like Gen Z and these attitudes that like young people have to cheating. Yeah, it's because you haven't been in a relationship yet of 10, 15, 20 years duration. You don't know what the contingencies and compromises are going to look like to make that marriage survive over the long term. And I don't say these things because I want everyone to be polyamorous. I say these things because I want people who are doing monogamy or social monogamy, I want those relationships to succeed on their own terms, which means sometimes something happens, it's not disclosed, you'd rather not know, and if you could zoom out and like be given truth serum and not remember the conversation and be told, do you want to know your wife cheated on you? Or would you rather not know that 5 years ago your wife had a one-off affair? Would you rather live in that blissful ignorance that the relationship has been successfully monogamous? Perfection successful. I always like to say, you probably heard me say a million times, monogamy is the only thing where perfection is the only metric for success. Nobody's allowed to fall down and get up. We talk about monogamy the way we talk about virginity. You're a virgin until you have intercourse with someone, and then you're not a virgin anymore. You popped your cherry. You're monogamous until you cheat on somebody, and then you're not monogamous anymore. We should talk about monogamy like we talk about sobriety. You can fall off the wagon and sober back up. And these are, my perspective as an older person. I'm like in my late 50s, but also a person in a 30-year relationship who's been reading the mail and listening to the calls of people in long ass term relationships. Yeah. When you're 20 and looking forward to your relationship, you want it to be perfect. When you're 40 and you're in that relationship for 20 years, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% agree. I think, it's not just that it's it's not so much Gen Z as it is just sort of like younger generations. Like you're saying, they don't have this perspective, and they're not in long-term relationships. They don't have the amount of time to have those like really long-term relationships to understand all the imperfection and what goes on. They also don't have the experience like you and I have, where we're getting these letters. And also when I'm talking to couples in couples counseling or individual counseling, and I see like the pain and the hurt and the damage that's done when one person does talk about the infidelity, when they were like on the fence and they do it, and then that's fucking it. Like the relationship's over, trauma has been created, maybe, and it's a whole fucking thing. So,
but some of the whole fucking thing for people is wholly fucking crazy. There are people who do not want to have sex with their spouses, but do not want to let their spouses have sex with anybody else. You made a monogamous commitment to me, which I guess was a suicide pact for your genitals, because I'm not having sex with you anymore. I don't want to have sex with you anymore. I don't want to have sex. I don't miss sex, but you are not allowed. And that to me seems like the monogamous sexless relationship, which I hear about all the time. That seems crazy to me. If you're sexless and monogamous, doesn't that mean you only don't have sex with your spouse, but you have sex with everybody else? Like what is a monogamous sexless commitment? What is that? I commit to only not having sex with you.
There was, speaking of Esther Perel, there was, on one of her podcasts where she does counseling for couples, like on the show.
Where should we begin?
Yes. She was talking to one of the partners who had cheated on their wife, and the wife was very hurt and upset and betrayed, all of this. And Esther was like, she was like trying to get in there. And one of the things that she said was like, okay, to the cheater, it sounds like you love and care about your relationship and your wife so much that you wanted to protect her from it by doing this and then not saying anything about it and then trying to put it in the past and move forward. Like, you really love her. You really like valued this relationship. That's so sweet. And it helped to like connect with the cheater, and it helped to get the like cheatee to kind of like open up and see it as like a loving act, when that doesn't feel like, it's really hard to do that, right?
Yes, it is really hard to convince people that sometimes lying is the most loving thing a person can do. Sometimes not getting a person's informed consent. I got a letter recently from someone who's, I believe their wife is chronically ill and incapable. And he knows that if he goes to her and says, it will add to her pain, the pain that she already feels around feeling inadequate and feeling like a burden. And if he goes to her and say like, okay, I just want to make sure that, obviously we don't have a sexual relationship anymore. You're incapable of having sex anymore. It's too painful. So can I have permission to do this with somebody else? It's just going to make it worse for her. Right. And she's been chronically ill for a very long time. I think people should have a conversation at the beginning of a relationship where they discuss these sorts of contingencies. Like, what happens when, like, we're 30 years into this relationship and this process I call siblingnification has
No, what's
occurred.
that all about? Yeah, I mean, I get it, but explain it a little.
I think we do harm sometimes, those of us in the sex and relationship advice racket, to relationships when we give people unrealistic expectations about what 25 years in looks like. And that if you're not still fucking like you were fucking when you met, there's a problem. And if we can just adjust all the dials, you'll be fucking like that again. You'll never be fucking like that again. That's why some people prefer open or poly, because that new relationship energy or that sense of excitement or just wanting to drink gallons of some other human being's spit, that comes back. But you can't have that with someone you've been with for 20 years. You have a lot of other things with that person that are insanely valuable, that should matter as much or more. You have intimacy, comfort, familiarity, security. You're known by this person and loved by this person and supported by this person who's always there. But you will never be erotically aroused by that person in the same way. And to tell people that they should be or they can be if they just buy this book or do this thing harms relationships, because it gives people unrealistic expectations that then are not met, that then they feel angry or that there's something defective about their relationship, when it's actually just a part of every long ass term relationship. And how do you handle it? Like, some people need that new relationship energy. They need that sense of sexual excitement in their life, and they can get it from porn, or they can live without it, and other people can't live without it. Other people don't want it, don't care, and the compensations of a long-term relationship more than reward them for what you lose in a long-term relationship. But it depends on who you're with and who you are.
Yeah. Oh, either way, it's a grief process that you have to go through. There's a real actual loss of not having that, like, whatever it is, sexy chemistry or desire that you had for each other 20 years ago. And it fucking sucks. And it's a real bummer. And it'd be great if you all in the relationship could talk about it and grieve it together. And you can go, like, like you're saying, there's so many books and courses that are sold. They're like how to get the spark back and how to make that chemistry. People are fucking buying that
and then
shit
I get in trouble. How to get the spark back? Fuck somebody else. And if that's not permitted in your relationship, and you don't want to be a cheater, and people don't, and people shouldn't generally cheat. I'm not handing out permission slips to cruel and sadistic serial adulterers and selfish narcissists. I am not. But if opening up the relationship isn't possible for you, as it isn't for most people in relationships, how do you combat boredom together? And I think one of the mistakes people make is they think 10 years in there's something wrong with their relationship because it's not the adventure it was at the start. And so the passion is gone, the spark is gone. At the beginning of the relationship, you were the adventure they were on. They were the adventure you were on. You were strangers to each other. You were scary. It was high stakes getting undressed with each other for the first time. And it just was effortlessly adventurous. 10, 20 years in, oh, that adventurous feeling is gone. There's something wrong with our relationship. No. That adventurous feeling was going to go away. And it is a price you paid for, like, the stability and familiarity and intimacy, the comfort. So how do you get that adventure back if you're not allowed to fuck other people? You have to go on an adventure together. You have to create an adventure with and for each other. You have to intentionally manufacture adventure. And that doesn't mean opening the relationship. That can mean just getting out of the bedroom, getting out of the rut, getting on the roof, getting in the car, messing around at work, like doing, if there's still a sexual connection there. But sometimes that spark goes out, it's never coming back. And then what? Then what? And how do you be at peace with that? And it's really hard to be at peace with that if it went out for one person but not the other. But if it went out for both and you're content and your marriage is companionate now, we don't talk enough about companionate relationships being terrific relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice if you'd be able to kind of like get there around the same time or at the same time. So there's that grief process.
But you didn't get to I love you around the same time usually. Somebody's ready to say it, the other person isn't.
Exactly.
Somebody wanted to get married, the other person needed more time to think about it before they wanted to be proposed to or wanted to propose.
Right.
Like, you never get to the same place at the exact same time.
No.
Somebody was ready for kids, but the other person wasn't. You had to have a conversation about it.
No. And say you want, you get to that place and one of you or both of you or all of you want to like feel that new energy relationship again. What you're asking or I think is like what we're asking maybe is like, how can you unravel the messages of toxic monogamy, possibly? Like, how can you kind of like and that, I think most people are just like, I can't or won't do that, or I don't even know that that's what's affecting me or something. They make the choice that that's not even an option, and then you're stuck, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then people are bitter and miserable and say shitty things about each other, and
Yeah.
little digs around the sexlessness in the relationship or the sexual dissatisfaction. I don't know. You know, if you want monogamy, you are signing up to be someone's sole sexual outlet. And that comes with a responsibility, I think, to meet their sexual needs to the best of your ability while you can. And if you can't, you should release them from that expectation, because a marriage is so much more. I'm often accused of like placing too much importance on sex, but I'm the one saying, here's your marriage. You have kids together, you own property together, you've knit two families, two extended families together. You have a shared history. You have this home that you feel safe and comfortable in, that your kids feel safe and comfortable in. And here's sex. I think all of this matters more than this. And yet, because I think this also matters, people accuse me of putting too much importance on sex, because I'll give somebody permission to go get their sexual needs met if they are unmet.
Speaking of permission and non-monogamy, Andrea, go ahead and play that second question for us.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Jeff. Longtime fans of both of you. So excited for this crossover. My problem is about my partner and I opening up our relationship. We both are totally on board. It's in alignment with our values and our belief systems. We've done so much work. We've read the books. We've listened to the podcasts. But every time we go to make a step in any sort of direction towards polyamory, I panic. My whole nervous system is flooded with fear. And I'm just really struggling to make that first step. Does it get easier? Is there anything I can do to help my body get more in alignment with my head? Any advice you have for me would be so helpful.
What do you think?
Listening to that question, I was reminded of how I felt about monogamy when I was young. That monogamy was what I thought I wanted, and I could wrap my head around it, and I understood it. It was what good people did, and it was what good people wanted. And I wanted to be a good person. And I was terrible at it. And I realized one day that like I kept feeling like I was failing at monogamy. And then the thing I've said a million times, I realized monogamy was failing me. It wasn't right for me. And so just listening to that, I was like, well, maybe you're failing at polyamory, not because of any emotional deficiency. I don't like the polyamorous people who get online and talk about open relationships or polyamorous relationships as if it's a more highly evolved state. Maybe these panic attacks are telling you that polyamory ain't right for you. And just as my inability to honor a monogamous commitment was evidence that I should, not that I was a terrible person, I should stop making monogamous commitments, and then I could be really good at an open relationship as opposed to really bad at a closed one. But when the caller said, we think about the first step, what is the first step? What are you talking about? Define first step. Does that mean like your partner disappearing for a night with somebody else? Does that mean having a soft swap, organized swingers club experience where there's no intercourse, but there's other sexual play or contact? Does that mean going out to a club and watching your partner flirt with somebody else? The first step can be a baby step. And if you're feeling this panic about first step, what I would want to know is, what are you talking about? What is the first? Is it a weekend away? Well, yeah, I would understand having a panic attack about that. But at a certain point, you have to. It's a bit of a bungee jump. At a certain point, you do have to take that leap. It's easier to take that leap if you've defined what it is and it's small and incremental. If all you've ever done is monogamy, go to a sexy environment with your partner and be on other sides of the room and watch each other interact with people and flirt and see how that feels. And, if seeing your partner through someone else's eyes is desirable, that can make you desire your partner in a new way or as acutely as you desired them when you first saw them for the first time. And that can fuel your thing even as you are bringing other people into your thing. And then from there, you can move on to, grinding on a dance floor with somebody or making out in a corner with somebody and see how you feel and keep checking in. But if you go out and you watch your partner flirt with somebody and you have a panic attack, well, maybe even if you understand intellectually polyamory, it might not be right for you. It's not right for everybody. And polyamory ain't open and open ain't polyamory. Like, people use those words interchangeably now in a way that's just not helpful. So also define what it is that you're doing, what kind of openness you're doing, and what are your rules.
I also, where I start with this caller is similar to where you start. We're like, are you sure you want this, babe? Like, where is this coming from? Why do you want it? It sounds like it matches up with your values and belief systems, and we love to see that.
Or have we turned the world on its head?
Right.
Because I thought I wanted monogamy because it's what good people did. And now there's a bunch of people who think they want openness or polyamory because it's what the cool kids do. And it's what you get memoir book contracts about, and people write articles about it in the New York Times. And like, everybody's doing it. So what's wrong with us that we're not doing it? Like, I've met some people who were doing openness or kink for all the wrong reasons. And just as I was doing monogamy for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And heterosexuality once upon a time for all the wrong reasons.
Sure. So maybe it's like, how do you accept the fact that, like, actually when it comes down to it, your body we're going to trust your body, and that it actually, like, you really do actually just like want to be monogamous, and then grieve the fact that you're not going to be poly or monogamish or whatever you're like looking for. But it's tricky because, like, is your body like your compass that's telling the truth, or is your body conditioned by toxic monogamy or the church or bullshit messages you got from the 80s and 90s? So I guess, I don't know. What are you smiling at?
Well, it's also possible that fear response is arousal and adrenaline, and is something that if you can take those baby steps and do test it, you will find that fear is something that you can put in harness, and it is erotic and powers your sexual connection with your partner. So I wouldn't say to somebody just because, like, this is scary. Well, don't do it. Skiing is scary. Bungee jumping is scary. There's a lot of things we do. Go to, like, horror movies is scary. A lot of things we do to provoke this kind of response. But we don't want to overinterpret this response when it comes to our sex lives, or we'll never challenge ourselves, push ourselves outside our comfort zones, have new experiences that we felt a little scared before we jumped off the bridge, tied to the bungee cord. But then, once we were flying, we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm so glad I jumped. But you only can have that, this is amazing, so glad I jumped, epiphany after you jumped. So the caller needs to think more deeply about this. And, we're going to parse this again and again and again. And the answer might be, if you really want to try this, you should try it. And it's going to be scary.
It's going to be scary, and it's nice that it doesn't have to be bungee jumping. You can make it like, let's just fucking jump off this bridge and see what happens. Probably not the best thing to do. But what is your way in? There might be a little tiny way in, whether it's parallel play or watching your partner flirt, your partner watching you make out with somebody. Like, there's probably something. Can you just like bump up against it? So it's kind of like, some sort of like exposure therapy kind of deal. We're like moving up, and you're checking in with your body, and you're learning how to like feel safe and okay. And once you bump up or go over the line, you get to go back to your partner, and your partner's like, I'm here for you, babe. It's okay. Let's leave. We don't, what I mean?
The fear is often, I'm going to lose you.
Right.
And the only way your partner can prove to you that you're not going to lose them is that they came back. But they can't prove that they're going to come back if they weren't allowed to go.
Exactly. Yes.
My husband and I have been together 30 years, and the first 4 or 5 years we were monogamous at his insistence, which for him, I was willing to try it with the understanding that, we adopted, we had a kid, and our big conflict that we had to resolve was, if I cheated or you cheated, cheating couldn't be a breakup level disaster. Because that wasn't fair to the kid we were about to adopt, I thought. because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're gay men. The odds one or the other of us is going to cheat at some point, probably 100%. And so, like, if we're adopting, and my husband then, you know, his attitude was, if you ever cheat on me, it's over. And I was like, we can't have kids then. It's not fair to the kids you're going to have, I think, for that to be your standard. I think I think the standard isn't anything goes, you can cheat on me, it's fine, because we're trapped because we had a kid. It has to be like, we'll try to work through this. That'll be our first response, not it's over as a first response. So we were monogamous for many, many years, and we'd already had, you know, adopted our kid. And we opened the relationship at my husband's instigation, not mine. He has, when he's been interviewed about it, made it sound like, oh, Dan is very persuasive. That's what he told the New York Times when they interviewed him about it. Dan is very persuasive, as if I like badgered him until we opened the relationship. But that first time he had sex with somebody else, for me, it was like, it was a one-way door. Our relationship went from what it had been to what it was now in an instant, the instant of insertion. In that instant, it transformed our relationship in a way that felt, even for us, you know, scary. And looking back now from like the perspective of the 25 years after that moment, like, it feels less scary than it did at that moment. It felt like we were remaking our relationship. And that's always scary. It was even scary, caller, for like a big non-monogamous sex freak like me at that moment. So I can understand why it would be scary for you. That was a very long way for me to get to that point.
I love that validation. Okay, Andrea, let's go to the next question.
Hey, Dan and Jeff. What do you both think of the recent stories about the two lifestyle and wellness influencers that got into hot water? Namely, Andrew Huberman and his simultaneous cheating with his 6 different partners, and Jonathan Van Ness being a classic egotistical monster on set. I think it's interesting that the both of them haven't publicly made a statement on it, although I suspect that that is most likely the wisest course of action. Are we holding these people to too high a standard, or are we too invested in the personal lives of strangers? Should we take them all down? Granted, I don't really believe that the latter is a reasonable expectation.
Talking a little bit about like them not addressing it, I get it. I mean, I think like, why the fuck would they? They probably like, it's probably a business decision to not address it. I think it would be really fucking cool if they both did. And like being like, oh, here's me growing, and here's like some accountability, or like, or saying like, I'm not going to address it because it's a private matter, and I've already addressed it privately or something. But I have like, I don't fucking care if they say something or don't say something about it. But I do think that it's interesting. This is happening all over the place. But I'm specifically interested in like the lifestyle and wellness like influencers or content creators, since I am one, and how maybe it's those people that we're like, well, if they're giving this beautiful, amazing advice, then they must be perfect. And if they're imperfect in some sort of way, then fuck them. I can't trust them. This isn't going to work. And the same thing, like when I'm a therapist and I'm talking to a client, usually very early on in therapy, first session or two, I'm like, hey, just to let you know, when I disappoint you, when I'm not a good enough therapist for you, when I hurt your feelings, when I fuck it up, when I don't remember your girlfriend's name or whatever, like, please let me know so that you and I can like have a reparative like experience, and you can see that like I'm still a good, amazing, caring, sweet, very handsome therapist that like knows how to like, and then we get to repair the relationship, and then you can like trust that you can do that out there. But that's, I mean, JVN and Andrew Huberman, they can't do that with all of their like parasocial relationships, right?
That was the word I was going to use.
Yeah, and so it seems like, I wish that we were in an environment where they could talk about this if they wanted to talk about it, but it seems like a bad business move if they do, because then there's more attention on them. They're gonna fuck up the apology or the accountability or whatever the fuck it is, and it just goes on forever.
They make the apology, and then reporters all run back to the people who made the original complaints for their comments on the apology, and it just fuels it. Mm-hmm. We talk about the attention economy. It really more, in many cases, is the parasocial relationship economy. Mm-hmm. That social media, podcasting have created for us, where we become invested in people who then are fallible and can disappoint us. I have no opinion about really either of these folks. I've never watched the Queer Eye reboot. Of course, I know who JVN is, and they seem lovely and charming.
Yeah, they're great.
But they also seem like a performer who's on. And I know enough about, I have a theater background. I know enough about actors to know that there's the moment when like the performance is on, and then there's the moment when the performer is like, it's not a real self or an other self. But it's like the non-turned out, not on facing the proscenium arch or facing from it, right? And people who are invested in, the performer or the performance will be disappointed by the person almost invariably. And so like I read a little bit about JVN, and it's like, okay, he's kind of a diva and an asshole backstage, but like, and most of the people complaining were employees. Like, do most employees love and worship their bosses?
Right.
And never get negative feedback that makes them like resentful of their bosses? And do people who have to, and like people who have to be sunshine publicly are often like, they have their dark moments, and where they stop making that effort to turn out the sunshine. And I think those things exist in tension in the same person. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody whose public persona was like this kind of unctuous, friendly, funny, charming, had this other side that was a little like mean, because we all are massive contradictions. So I read that thing about JVN, and I was like, okay, not surprised.
Seems to fit.
And I read that thing about the other guy, and was like, yeah, men sometimes want to fuck a lot of women and will lie to women to get to fuck them. That is a thing that happens. And his podcast wasn't about sexual propriety. It wasn't like, he's not Billy Graham.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a shitty thing to do. It's a shitty thing to do, to string people along, lie to them, gaslight them in the way that he seemed. I mean, people overuse that term like they overuse narcissist now. But like to tell people not to trust their gut and to trust you and your glutes instead. Like, okay, like shitty thing to do. But
sure.
Yeah, people do shitty things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which doesn't excuse doing shitty things. But I'm like, I didn't read that and I wasn't shocked. But I also wasn't a listener or follower of his.
Right. There's like, it's similar to like things that we've been saying this whole episode is like, there's gray area, there's nuance, don't expect perfection. How can you like accept the whole person? And even when, like you're in a relationship and you have a partner, it's more like you have integrated love for them, where like there's lovely, positive, amazing things, and there's stupid, fucking annoying things or flaws or perfections or a red flag or two. And because you have like a personal connection with that partner, you can like maybe like work on forgiving them. But like putting people up on a pedestal, you're setting yourself up. Right.
But this guy it doesn't sound like this guy was like, he failed. Like he made a monogamous commitment, got a hand job on a business trip from a massage therapist. That's not what he was doing. He was playing people.
He was.
And people have a right to their own experience. And if you're shitty to people and lie to people, they get to share that with friends or curious reporters from New York Magazine if you're high profile. And so, yeah, like, I don't feel terrible for him, but he didn't like slip up, and wasn't that hypocrisy is the tribute that vice pays virtue. He wasn't like trying to maintain appearances to uphold the value of social monogamy while allowing for some human frailty and fallibility around the edges. And of course he's human and fallible. He was just lying to get pussy and as much of it as he could get. And that's kind of I get it. I understand that men do that, straight men do that, and gay guys lie to get butt, and like people lie, and it's not okay, and it's not nice. And if you're a public figure, that can catch up with you because people will talk about it.
There's also the like, this is maybe not fair of me, I don't know, but like, why would you do that as a public figure? Like, why, if you're like lying to 6 other women, and then the 6 women eventually find each other on social media kind of easily, and then they're all in a group chat, like sharing information together. What the fuck? Don't be a public figure then. Like, this is like, you're being really sloppy, and you're being an asshole, and you're being skeezy. There
are websites now where it's not even, you don't have to be a public figure, where women are comparing notes about shitty guys who lied to them and outing them. So maybe just kind of don't do that generally. But why would he do that? Because I think that was the thrill. That people said that about Clinton. Like, why would he risk everything? Why would he risk? Because the risk itself was a turn on.
Mm-hmm.
And fooling people, for some people, is their kink, is what arouses them. Having it over on someone, and having it over on more than one someone.
Sure.
So like that's what I kind of read into it when I read
It's
about what
arousing.
he'd been doing.
I would also, I mean, I'm not his therapist and I can't diagnose him, but I imagine there's some sort of maybe childhood wound there. Maybe there's some like trauma that's fueling this need for like to fuck or get attention or get love or see how many fucking women he can be with. I don't know.
Or maybe
Not
he
that
just
that's
likes
excusing.
sex and wants to have a lot of it.
Sure.
And like I feel bad for straight men sometimes. It's harder, even for like a hot, rich, jacked, straight guy. Like the average, reasonably attractive gay guy with good personal hygiene can have as many sex partners as Wilt Chamberlain had in his lifetime. But to have as many sex partners as Wilt Chamberlain had, if you're a straight man who wants to sleep with women, you've got to be a sports star or a billionaire. And there is a kind of... There's a lot of reasons why this could be a whole like hour by itself. Like the differences between men and women sexually that I think are real and undeniable and borne out when you compare like gay sex subcultures and gay communities to lesbian sex subcultures and lesbian communities. It's a real good test case, but man, a gay guy who wanted to like sleep with 5 guys can be completely upfront about that and have 5 guys, especially a gay guy who looked like that guy looks.
Sure.
A straight guy who wants to sleep with 5 women that he isn't paying is going to have to be a deceitful piece of shit.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be. He shouldn't be a deceitful piece of shit. He should be honest. He should find his way into a polycule or a poly community and be straightforward. You don't have to be a lying piece of shit anymore. We worked hard to remake the world a little bit so that there's room for people, that monogamy and commitment bullshit talk doesn't have to be where you go to get into somebody's pants. But he didn't avail himself of that new world.
Maybe he will now though.
Shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if he doesn't have a wound from childhood, somebody should put him in a time machine and go wound him.
Andrea, play the last question for us.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Therapy Jeff. Big fan. I was wondering, what is a question about relationships that you are absolutely sick to death of answering? And what's a question that you wish you got asked a lot more?
For me, for the question that I get asked the most and I'm sick of answering, and I'm interested, I don't know if you get this question specifically. It might be because like I'm an Instagram therapist, but hundreds maybe of the same question where it's the girlfriend who says, I have a boyfriend who follows Instagram models and I hate it. What should I do about it? That is the number one most requested question. I've answered it 3 to 5 times.
What do you tell people to do about it?
I say, girlfriend, tell your fucking boyfriend how you feel when you see them scrolling through or liking all the like hot, sexy photos. And boyfriend, just stop fucking following them. Like, is it more important for you to follow these like sexy models and like their photos, knowing how it's going to like affect your girlfriend? I get that, like, you can make really great arguments on both sides, whatever. But it's such a, and it feels like a little off brand for me to be like, boyfriends, just stop fucking doing this shit. But it feels so easy just to not follow them anymore.
What about the girlfriends who say, I don't want him watching porn?
Yeah, that doesn't feel okay to me. Does that feel like, that's like really close to you?
Well, for a lot of people, social media now is where they get their porn. They follow porn people they like on Twitter or Instagram who post dirty stuff. Right. I feel like people are entitled to a zone of erotic autonomy. And if you try to control what you can't control, you're going to generate a lot of conflict in your relationship. But people have to be considerate of their partner's feelings and insecurities. So if you follow a couple of porny people, have an alt where you follow them that you do not open in front of your partner in deference to their... Out of consideration for their insecurities. And my solution for porn is always, it's almost always like the female partner that has a problem with him watching porn, although women watch porn at the exact same rates now as men, but she has a problem with it. And I tell, him to tell her that he doesn't watch porn, and I tell her to pretend to believe him. And if he goes to the lengths that you're not stumbling over evidence anymore, take the win.
Mhm.
He's being considerate.
Mhm.
But the people police their partners for evidence of what they should just assume to be true, that he likes to look at other hot people.
Mhm.
And how do you allow, you can't control that. You have to allow for it, but you also have to be considerate of your
Right.
partner's feelings.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I think I like lean for some reason. I lean more into the considerate one for this one, but for every other, like I don't want him to watch porn or something. I'm just like, all right, how the fuck do we accept this and let this be? But it feels so easy to unfollow. Like if you're like, go look at porn, go look at like hot people in another way, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is people sit next to each other in bed scrolling
Exactly.
through social media.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
she's going to look over, he's going to look over and see.
Exactly.
And if you're not gay, like my husband will like just show me his phone, go, look at this guy. And I'm like, he's really hot.
Uh-huh.
Because we can both desire the same people together
Exactly.
and we have an open relationship. But like in an opposite sex relationship, there's this insecurity, threat, competitiveness.
Mhm. Mhm.
And yeah, so like create an alt. There's a time you don't look at porn in front of your partner who's made uncomfortable by you looking at porn.
Totally. Exactly.
But people look at their social media in which they have mixed like funny dog videos and following their friends and family with following porn stars and people who post,
Mhm.
you know, their bodies all the time. And yeah, you got to like unscramble those eggs and
I support that.
know when to eat them.
Exactly. What's the question that you get too much that you don't want to fucking answer anymore?
We've kind of talked about it a lot already, which is just, I'm in a sexist marriage. What do I do?
Right. Yeah.
I literally wrote a column 20 years ago after writing Savage Love for 13 years where I said, I'm not going to answer this question ever again
Mhm.
because the answer I've given over and over and over again is cheat or leave
Mhm.
or go without. Those are your three options and they're never going to change. And there's no magic words I can say that get you permission from your partner without having to ask for it or get you somewhere you can like rationalize it as anything other than cheating. It still is cheating.
Right.
It is kind of morally a failing on your part, but the least worst option at times. And I get that question. I opened my email before we got on this call to do this talk, and there were 3 questions from people who were like, "Oh, my sexist relationship, my sexist relationship." Like, I can't keep answering this question every week forever and ever and ever.
Mhm.
It's the rock I have to roll uphill.
Yeah. The question I would love to get is maybe, I don't know if you get like a demographic breakdown of who's listening or following you. I think maybe you can get that on podcasts, but my demographic breakdown is 85% women and like 15% men. And so it would be nice if like a guy sent me a question saying like, I fucked up, how can I be better? Sort of like admitting that they've done something bad. They feel guilty or upset about it. Now, what can I do to like make this up to my partner? I've never gotten that question, especially from a man, and it would be nice to see it.
Yeah, I don't get that question either. I get the question, I did this terrible thing, and I feel obligated to tell them about it. And Esther Perel, I'm going to quote her again, she calls it the burden of knowing. And sometimes you're shifting the burden of knowing onto somebody without giving a thought to whether they would be able to bear that burden or would choose to bear that burden. And you have to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't get that question either.
What question do you wish you got more?
What's a butt plug?
Oh, you don't get that question?
I don't get that question anymore. When I first started writing Savage Love, it was I am so old. It was so long ago that there was no internet. And people would hear someone say butt plug, or they heard a gay friend say the word butt plug, and they would think, what, is that a giant cork for people who are incontinent after too much anal sex? What is a butt plug? And they would write me, what's a butt plug? And I would get to answer that question. And it's a great and easy question to answer in your sleep or with a hangover. Mm-hmm. It looks like a lava lamp. It goes in your butt. The sphincter closes around it, holds it in place. When you have your orgasm and your anal sphincters contract, it'll move against your prostate. It doesn't look like a dick. It's a good butt toy for straight guys who want to experience penetration without feeling like they're getting fucked. Like, That was a fun column to write. Butt plugs have a wiki page now. No one needs to ask me what a butt plug is anymore. All my questions that I sometimes feel unqualified to answer, it's all situational ethics. I did this, they did that. Who's right? Who's wrong? Am I the asshole? I wished I'd coined that. And like way in here, and it's all every week, every question, it's being Solomon and sawing the baby in half. And it's so much more stressful than what's a butt plug, which is why I wish just once in a while somebody without access to the internet somehow found my column and my snail mail address and couldn't find the wiki page for butt plugs and had to ask me about it.
How many questions do you get a week?
A couple of hundred?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And do you personally go through those?
I do.
Wow.
I've tried, I'm Murphy Brown, which is an ancient reference about assistance. I'm too much of a control freak, and I like to read all the mail. And when I had people who would like read the mail, when the column was in like 100 print publications before the internet came along, I would get sometimes 2,000 letters in a week. And I couldn't go through them all. And I would find letters that had been like, oh, Dan won't want to answer this one in the pile, that I would really loved and wanted to answer. And so I felt like somebody was sorting them, and then I was going to look at them anyway.
Right.
So yeah, I read all my mail.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you read all of yours?
No. Yeah. I mean, I get dozens a day. I don't have enough time to read through them. I look through some or look through my comment section and get inspiration for content and what people are wanting to hear about. But no, I don't have the time or energy to do it.
Do you feel guilt about it? Sometimes I feel guilt. Sometimes I'll stumble over a letter looking for another one that's 4 years old, and wow, that person needed a medic and a chaplain and some advice, and I didn't even see the question.
I used to feel guilt until I just continued to get flooded. And there's been quite a few times where people get mad at me for not responding or answering their questions. I'm just like, fuck off. Who the fuck? I'm not your personal therapist. This is not going to happen.
And you don't understand the premise here, which is, of course, I get more questions than I could possibly answer.
Exactly. Right.
And I can't answer every question. Although often I will see at the bottom of a letter I'm not going to answer, thank you for reading. It was helpful to me just to write this out. And that's somebody who has they hear your voice in their head because they listen or they read you, and just having that, even if it wound up being a one-sided conversation where they said something to you, totally helped them. And that makes me feel better about the letters I don't get to.
Good.
Can I share one anecdote?
Oh, yeah.
About writing the column before the internet and then writing it after the internet and email. It's a question I still get. I just get a different version of it. And I've always gotten, Dear Dan, snail mail, there's a sore on my genital, my anus. This is what it looks like. This is what's coming out of it. I'm too embarrassed to go to the doctor. What do I do? And I would run these questions every once in a while to say, I am not a doctor. Even if I knew what was going on, you'd still have to go to the doctor. I can't print the column with penicillin ink this week for you to stuff in your panties. You got to go to the doctor. And you just delayed it by the 2 weeks it took me to get it into print. And I don't get those letters with those descriptions anymore of the sores on the genitals from the people who are too embarrassed to go to the doctor. I get photographs in emails from people who stood on sinks in dorms, bent over and took a picture in a mirror and emailed me a picture of their genitals or their anus on an unsecured server with their own name on the email, saying, I'm too embarrassed to go to the doctor. What is going on? Tell me. I have a couple of hundred of these pictures that I've saved over the last 20 years that I've been getting email. I want to do a flip book with them or something. I don't know. My lawyer tells me that anybody who sends me anything, the copyright shifts to me. So I own all these pictures. And it makes it hard to read my email on an airplane because they don't come every day.
Right.
But they come often enough that I just know if I start reading email on an airplane for Savage Love, a giant picture of somebody's sphincter is going to pop up or their vulva.
Yeah. Does that feel kind of sweet that they have this parasocial but relationship with you where they feel safe enough to send you the most vulnerable thing that's on their body? And not, is that like cute?
Yeah, I feel honored by it, but also
Sure.
I don't want to see your sphincter with a sore on it. And I can't do anything about it.
Right,
like,
right.
Like you just
What a
delayed it. It's
helpless feeling.
always, I'm too embarrassed to go to the doctor. I'm not a doctor, and you still have to go to the doctor.
Right. God, that's great. I love that. Thank you for telling me. All right, Dan Savage, it's been so good talking to you. I love all of your advice. I think that you were like, I'm glad that I was able to grow also with the should the boys just stop following the Instagram models, and your alternative of just like creating an alt account. Like, why didn't I think of this? So, yeah, I've evolved a bit on that, and I thank you for it.
I'm younger and hipper to the ways of social media, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
No, I'm not. You have way more followers than I am. You're doing it better than I do.
I might be. All right. All right. Thanks for coming on, and I'll talk to you later. Oh, and I'll make sure that I submit the hump video. I'm excited.
Yeah,
for that
you
now.
will be in hump next year.
Yeah. Oh,
I can't wait.
Mm-hmm. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Problems. Okay. We might